Thank you very much. Thanks for having me here. How many of you are AARST members? I can see that. So some of the things I'm going to talk about this morning hopefully will relay why being a part of AARST is good for you. And I invite all of you who are not AARST members to really consider joining. I understand I'm being filmed for the Springfield meeting that I can't make. I've actually been on the road all week making these meetings in different locations, and I just can't do the Springfield one. So hello to all of you in Springfield in the future. Perhaps we can do a better job, I'm going to take that on, in coordinating dates for you vendors that are here, in coordinating dates with all the stakeholder meetings and EPA region meetings and whatnot, where they're not all stacked in the same week and on top of each other. In fact, the reason I wasn't here yesterday and Dr. Phil gave this presentation for the group that attended yesterday is because I was at a meeting in Minneapolis with the group there. So, this is my clicker. There it is. So a few years back at our winter board retreat, the group came up with 3 pillars of sustainability for AARST. And those pillars are standards, proficiency, and policy. And I threw in between those pillars the words public awareness and public action because we actually got some criticism from someone who saw a presentation I made last year and said, well, gee, why doesn't AARST have public awareness as one of its pillars? And quite frankly, the reason is because public awareness and public action are a part of all 3 of these pillars. And we think we can get more leverage with public awareness and action, concentrating on things like public policy, our proficiency program, and the standards from our standards consortium. So AARST has 2 programs that we're really proud of in addition to being the professional or trade organization. We have the National Radon Proficiency Program that we operate with a separate board, certification council that oversees that. And then we also have the AAARST Standards Consortium, which is a consortium that writes standards, and I'll get to that in just a minute, and using the ANSI process to make them consensus national standards, and we're very proud of all the work that we've accomplished there. So speaking of standards, we now have 12 that are, at least if they're not all completed, 2 of them we're still working on. So we have 10 that are completed and 2 in the works, and ANSI requires the consortium to update these standards or to at least review them for update every 5 years. So the dates do kind of change as they get updated. So you can see some of those dates are 2017 to 2019. Actually, one of them is 2015, and that one will have to be reviewed and completed and back out again sometime this year. The 2 there that are in red, the dates are wrong. The protocol for the collection of transfer and measurement of radon in water didn't make it out in 2019, so it will be hopefully out by the end of this year. And then there's also a group working on radon mitigation standards for radon in water. Does anybody in the room participate on one of the standards committees? Okay, so we do have an opportunity for you if you'd like to participate on one of these committees. We have different stakeholders that are part of these groups because they're not just made up by the AARST Board of Directors. In fact, the AARST Board of Directors has nothing to do with this other than to help make sure funding goes in that direction. It's done by stakeholders like you, and it's a process. Things are discussed and bantered back and forth until they finally decide on something, and then they review them as part of the ANSI requirements. One of the reasons I'm bringing this up to you is Mr. Daniels tells me that like other states right now, they're looking to move to these national consensus standards. So that's going to be in your future. It's something that EPA, with a lot of persistent arm twisting from AARST, has now put out a letter to all of the surge grant or state indoor radon grant recipients that they want and prefer that the recipients move to national consensus standards. So it might be a good time for you to start getting familiar and get involved in these if you live in Illinois, and start to point out some of the things that you may see in the future, little differences perhaps from what you're operating under now. You can go to these standards and view them at two different locations. You can go to AARST.org and then click on standards, and it'll take you over to the Standards Consortium page, and you can click on any of them and they come up in flip books and you can read all through them. You can also go to the EPA website, and thankfully after many years they have retired their 1992 and older standards and put them in archives, since they really hadn't been looked at or reviewed in all those years. And so they're now in the history books, and our standards are there on their website, and you can click on them and it will take you again over to our site, and you can view them and read them at will. If you are an AARST member, you can actually purchase your own copy at a really, really fine discount. So I urge you to consider that, particularly as time progresses and you will be following these standards. And perhaps you do follow some of these standards already. I don't know if as far as multifamily, if you're not pointing to that yet. But if you're, say for example, doing HUD work, I'll get to that in just a minute, you're going to have reason to want to get familiar with the multifamily standards.
If you're doing HUD work, you have to follow both of them, the Illinois standard and
Okay, did everybody hear that? In Illinois, you need to follow both standards. So there's something there to consider. So I put this up here because it came right off the HUD website, and I was really proud to see it because HUD is finally, in the last couple of years, starting to really listen and work with AARST to include and point to our standards. And that's a big breakthrough. For those of you who've been around for a long time know that HUD was not too interested in doing anything related to radon, much less listening to suggestions and standards that industry put together. So these are right off the website, and there are 4 reasons why HUD is proposing changes to their multi-family accelerated processing, or MAP guide. And this is the guide that HUD uses for testing policy for multifamily that's associated with FHA loans, and there were 2 issues that they really felt they needed to address in the update based on conversations we've been having with them repeatedly. And one of them is a Zone 3, an EPA Zone 3 exemption. So you can see this first one is radon concentrations are site specific and the risk cannot be adequately determined based on zones, was their first reason. And then Freddie Mac does not allow EPA zone testing exemption, so that was another reason they felt like they needed to create some consistency there. They also, being HUD, operate a residential care facilities program, and that one does not have the Zone 3 exemption, so they pointed that out. And then this one I really liked because it actually gave credit to AARST, and in particular Jane Malone, our National Policy Director. So the data submitted by Jane Malone, National Policy Director at AARST, suggests that HUD's Zone 3 exemption may miss up to 33% of projects with radon over 4 picocuries per liter. And then finally, they mention also that the new guidance is going to update and eliminate the 25% sampling exception and require 100% ground floor testing as per our standards. So I don't know about you, but this is really big news. We've been fighting this for a long time, and to have them finally get it, something I wanted to let you know about. This has not been released yet as a done deal. It's still out for some public comment, but word has it that this is the direction they're going to go unless they get some major resistance, and I don't think they're going to. So we'll stay tuned for that. How many of you do some HUD testing? Huh? Okay. Another thing that we've been doing at AARST is spending time in Washington talking to Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, as well as the National Housing Finance Agency about getting some consistency between the programs and making sure that they understand things that are going on out in the field. Oftentimes they're sitting in Washington and processing paper and reports for these loans, but they don't really know what's happening out in the field. And so by us having the opportunity to speak with them, we have brought a number of things to their attention, and we have some opportunities coming up where we can start to train their personnel and be more involved. So the doors were open. We were able to get in and had some good meetings, and we're going to continue to follow up with them as the months progress throughout the year. Something else that we accomplished this year is our lobbyist, Randy Pence, sent us over an email a few months back and said there was a bill coming up in the Senate that related to the Department of Defense and had some language on radon in it that seemed to be outdated, and we may have an opportunity to get that changed. So staff put together some suggested changes, and as a result, the law did pass with our language in it. And it says that the secretaries of the military departments will establish radon testing procedures that are consistent with current national consensus standards. So that's something we're really promoting actively this year, is to get these national standards adopted everywhere. And so we were successful in getting this done here for the Department of Defense. And it goes on to say that a unit of privatized military housing needs radon mitigation to ensure radon levels are below recommended levels. The landlord providing the housing unit shall submit to the Secretary of the Military Department concerned not later than 7 days after determination of the need for radon mitigation, the mitigation plan for the housing unit. So this is some more, this is actually passed, it's law. It started in March 1st into effect. More good news for industry. The more we get referred to in these types of laws and regulations, the better for all of us.
So the bill that passed is called the current national consensus standard?
No, the bill is actually it was Senate Bill 1790, and yeah. So what was included in that was this section on radon, and we were able to get the language updated to include these things. Thanks for asking. Another issue that came up late last year that we had to work with and spilled over into this year, the National Association of Home Builders were successful at getting a proposal adopted, at least in the first round of voting by the Residential Code Council, that would allow for fans, mitigation fans, to be put inside or under the living space and dumped to the sidewall without having to take it up for termination. And our position on this was not necessarily that this was an awful idea. We just thought it was an awful idea without more evidence that this was indeed a safe practice. Obviously, fans are a lot more airtight than they've ever been. So perhaps there's not as much opportunity for leakage inside the conditioned space, but if it's there, there's always a chance. And there are folks that would argue that the exhaust point, the radon concentrations there, dilutes rapidly enough that reentrainment is really not the issue that perhaps some of us believe it to be. So I think that we're just looking to make sure that this is studied before we adopt it. So good news there is we were able to put together a challenge, and with the help of the state radon programs and our staff, we were able to defeat this. And so that was another big win for us. Licensure via certification is something that we're certainly fond of in this day, where getting a full certification program is probably less likely in a lot of states than it was in the past, as a lot of state legislators are not in the mood to put more regulations on people. So we're looking to promote this type of program, and we have a success in Kentucky where not only are they going to require testers and mitigators there to be certified, but also to follow the AARST National Consensus Standards. And then Indiana, we were approached by Paul Crivens, who is the state program director there, to see if we could assist him in sort of reworking the regulations, which were really, really outdated. And we provided him with enough information and on the boots, or on the ground boots, to help him accomplish what he was after. And so they have passed a licensure via certification bill there that includes utilizing the ANSI standards, and it has passed through the House, and it has passed through the Senate Environmental Committee, and we're expecting a final vote on that any time now. So it hasn't passed yet, but there doesn't seem to be any real opposition to it. So we expect that to be passed sometime in the next few weeks and sent over to the governor for signature. And then this one I kind of bring up every year, because it seems like every year we have to go to Washington and let them know that we're just not going to stand for the surge grants being completely wiped out of the budget and the elimination of the EPA radon program. And every year they zero out the budget for these two programs, and every year we have to go explain that this is not acceptable. And so far we have been successful every year, and it's just a paltry $8 billion that get divided between the states. But we haven't succeeded in getting any more money, but we have kept at least the status quo all these years because of our presence. And we've been told time and time again, we are the only ones that show up to defend spending on this issue. If we weren't there, there would be no noise, there would be no objections, and it would have been gone a long time ago. So over those 9 years, that's $72 million that have gone into the state programs, and that's all due to our active lobby in Washington. And finally, as far as the proficiency part, or pillar, we're on target to have our ANSI application for ANSI accreditation for individual certification, hopefully ready by the end of the year. I don't think we're going to have it submitted by then, but at least ready. We're working on new exams. We've had a few delays in that process, but we're making up for some lost time on that now. And we hope to have the new updated exams ready by 2021, even if we're still waiting for our accreditation. And we're going to be sending out the exam test domains and subdomains to the trainers here in the next few weeks, where they can start updating. I think you should be pretty familiar with this if you came to one of these events last year. I brought up the fact that we have a tiered level scheme that's being proposed, where we have a measurement field technician and a measurement professional, similar to what you have here in Illinois. And then same thing with mitigation. We would have a mitigation installer who would work under the supervision of a mitigation specialist. So, as Patrick mentioned, we have our International Radon Symposium in Nashville. How many of you have been to Nashville? Did you have fun? Nashville's the hottest city in the country right now. And I mean, not with temperature, but I'm talking about just a place to visit. They can't seem to build hotel rooms fast enough. People want to go there. So we're going to be in the new Grand Hyatt, and it's a great time for you to get to know other people in the industry and find out what's going on, and as Patrick said, learn about new products that the vendors are exhibiting at the in the exhibit hall. We expect to have we have a large exhibit hall this year. We expect to have a lot of new companies there. So please make an effort to show up for that. I think you'll find it a very wise business decision. And other than that, I think AARST rocks. Thank you.